Loki takes us back in time to 2012 as we see the moments following Loki escaping from the Avengers in Endgame. Loki finds himself in the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. It doesn't take long before soldiers show up, claiming to be part of the Time Variance Authority. They're ready to arrest Loki and slow down time after a nasty blow as they prepare to reset the timeline. The Tesseract is taken too, while Loki is thrown into an elevator with a four-armed robot. After disintegrating his clothes, Loki is taken down to sign documents confirming everything he's ever said. Well, this place is the Time Variance Authority, and their inception is all part of what was once a vast multiversal war. With different timelines battling for dominance, the Timekeepers managed to stop all this with a sacred timeline. These variants are those who deviated from their original path, and the TVA are there to set time back where it should be. We then skip back in time to 1549 to the Aix province in France. A small girl runs scared, but she points out to the TVA, and in particular a guy called Agent Mobius, that the devil is responsible for what's befallen them. Midway through talking, a man steps through a doorway and hands over a file about Loki. Interestingly, Loki brings up a lot of good points while standing on trial. While he's questioned about the sacred timeline, he brings up the Avengers and how they jumped back through time to distort the timeline. Apparently, the Avengers rewriting history was supposed to happen so they get a free ticket. Loki leaving the timeline, however, is not. And yet if it wasn't for the Avengers, then he wouldn't have been able to leave, so a bit of a paradox there. Anyway, Loki is found guilty, but just before he's taken away, Agent Mobius shows up and saves his life. Loki is in no mood to negotiate though, and scoffs at the notion of the TVA being in charge. More exposition ensues as Mobius confirms his job is to track down dangerous variants. For now, Loki is shown up best hits of his life, but when he questions the different moments of messing about with time, Mobius dodges the questions and gets back to the focus subject here, Loki. Loki is even shown instances from the future too, with his mother killed. Apparently this is supposed to happen, with specific emphasis on Loki's traits about causing pain and mischief so others can achieve their best selves. While Mobius is distracted, Loki manages to slip away and uses the teleporter to find the desk worker called Casey he spoke to briefly earlier in the episode. This guy is incredibly dumb and apparently has never heard of a fish before. He also has the Infinity Stones tucked away in his drawer too. With the Tesseract in hand, Loki questions whether the TVA really are the greatest power in the universe. As Loki moves back to the room he started in with Mobius, he sees his own death play out at the hands of Thanos. This is the conclusion to his timeline, of course. Eventually, Mobius shows up and confirms why they're using Loki after all. It turns out the variant they've been tracking is actually Loki himself. We then jump to Oklahoma 1858. The TVA show up to track their target, but this hooded figure drops a lantern on the ground and watches as everything burns. It's Loki, right? Surely it's Loki. Minutemen respond to a Nexus event in 1985 Wisconsin. They search for the renegade Loki variant. But the mission goes awry when Hunter C-20 is brainwashed, causing her to attack her own unit. When she eventually passes out, the renegade Loki variant takes her captive and passes through a time door of their own. At the TVA office, 2012's Loki receives lectures from Miss Minutes about how Nexus events function. He learns that there is a set amount of time before the TVA cannot reset the branch timeline, leading to the collapse of said timeline and reality. Mobius calls Loki up to respond to the ambush. However, Hunter B-15 and the others are reluctant to work with a Loki, with thousands of his variants pruned by the TVA already. Mobius, wary about Loki's traitorous nature, offers him a meeting with the Timekeepers should he cooperate with them to take down the variant. They rejoin the 1985 Wisconsin branch and discover no traces of the variant. While attempting to scout out leads, Loki tries to inform them of a Loki's mischievous behavioral patterns, warning them of potential traps. However, this turns out to be a stalling tactic, which forces the Minutemen to retreat, pruning the timeline as the branch nears the point of no return. Meeting with Ravonna Renslayer, Mobius explains to her that by understanding their Loki ally, the TVA can understand and capture the variant. Renslayer gives Mobius one chance to use Loki, noting that the Timekeepers have their full attention on the case. Mobius takes Loki to the library and has him scour through various files regarding the variant, hoping to utilize his Loki perspective. Loki meets a librarian at a desk, attempting to retrieve files about the emergence of the Timekeepers and the beginning and end of time. However, since those files are classified, he is instead handed more files about himself. After finding information about Ragnarok from the sacred timeline, Loki concludes that the variant is hiding in apocalyptic events. He reasons to Mobius that as long as the intended outcome of the apocalypse still occurs, no branches will emerge as all variances would be destroyed. Mobius reluctantly follows Loki to 79 AD Pompeii, where he advises him to create minuscule disturbances. Instead, Loki loudly warns the locals of the impending eruption of Mt. Vesuvius. Despite Loki's efforts to create a town of variants, no branches are formed. The pair return to the TVA as the village is destroyed, now knowing that Loki's theory is correct. Loki asks Mobius how time is supposed to end, learning from him that the timekeepers are unraveling the future from its infinite branches, while the TVA protects what came before. Once time fully concludes, so does the TVA, creating order across time. Loki tells Mobius of a saying that no one is ever truly good or evil, attempting to create doubt about the timekeeper's intentions. Recalling his encounter with a boy in 1549 France, Mobius retrieves the kablooey candy he had taken from him. As kablooey was sold between 2047 and 2051, the pair go through natural apocalyptic disasters that occurred between those years, such as the extinction of the swallow in 2050 and Krakatoa's 2049 eruption. In search of references to the candy, they arrive at 2050 Alabama, where a catastrophic hurricane would wipe out Haven Hills, a corporate town owned by the Roxcart Superstore. Renslayer reluctantly approves Mobius' bid to send a Minutemen unit to Haven Hills. B-15 briefs them about the Superstore. Due to the hurricane, a large number of civilians are taking shelter inside, allowing the variant to hide in plain sight. Arriving at Roxcart, Loki accompanies B-15 on her order. Unbeknownst to them, the variant is already aware of their presence, controlling B-15 to interact with Loki before knocking her unconscious. A civilian worker who touched B-15 begins to menacingly approach Loki. Recognizing that the man was the variant, Loki reveals his plan to overthrow the timekeepers under the variant. He attempts to recruit him to his cause, but the variant rejects this offer. Loki eventually loses sight of the worker and is attacked by another man controlled by the variant, who collapses after attaching a timed tempad to an apparatus. Elsewhere, Mobius' unit is searching for stolen reset charges when they find a catatonic C-20. She reveals that she has surrendered the top-secret location of the timekeepers. Loki soon comes face-to-face with the cloaked variant, who reveals herself as a female Loki. The timer expires, and her reset charges are sent scattered across the sacred timeline, creating a wide array of branching timelines. The TVA is startled by the mass occurrences of Nexus events, forcing Renslayer and other Minutemen units into action. The variant leaves Roxcart through a time door. Loki gives chase, leaving Mobius behind.